One thing that I've done that you can do that's helped me tremendously is read and learn the stories and histories and lives of some of the most successful people who have ever lived. And you don't even have to go that far. Just study someone who has gotten fairly successful and achieved what they wanted to achieve, whether it was a certain level of income or a certain level of, satisfaction in life or happiness or stability or, financial independence, whatever it is. Study their lives. And the more people you study, the more you find that oftentimes they've gone through a lot of struggles to get to where they are. Let me give you an example. The billionaire John Paul DeJorio, he was fired from 4 jobs, he was homeless, and he lived off $2 a day. J. Craig Venter, the man behind, sequencing the human genome, he had a D- average in high school. Matthew Weiner, the man behind Mad Men, now he's worth $20 million. He had to pitch his show for 7 years, and it was rejected all over Hollywood. Jillian Michaels was tormented and bullied in school for being overweight, and now she runs a huge fitness, health, and nutrition empire, and one of her channels, BFit, has over 2 million subscribers, and she's worth tens of millions. She's worth millions. Hans Zimmer, he's the composer behind some of the most iconic films ever, and in my opinion, some of the best film scores of all time. From Inception to the Dark Knight trilogy, to Interstellar, to Lion King, the list goes on and on and on. It's just incredible. Guess what? This guy was kicked out of 9 schools and repeatedly told that he would be a failure and he would never amount to anything, and one day he would end up in jail. J.K. Rowling, I hope you know who she is. If not, she is the first female author billionaire. Now she's no longer a billionaire because she donated most of her money to charity. But she is the person behind the Harry Potter series. And she was turned down by 12 publishers before a single publisher gave her a chance. And that publisher only gave her a chance because their child loved the book so much and begged for it to be published. Anderson Cooper, this man's worth reportedly $100 million. He is a CNN news reporter. He's the man behind Anderson Cooper 360. And this man, despite having all these credentials, all these connections supposedly, and graduating from Yale, a top Ivy League school, he could not get a job out of school. And he really wanted to get into what he's doing now, but the hierarchy, the structure, the status would not let him in. And on it went, and he ended up just going on his own way and making his own way. He literally lived off $5 a day, traveled to dangerous political war-stricken countries, and he went out there and filmed his own news reports, and then went back and sold it to the one radio show or radio station that hired him back in the day for pennies on the dollar because it was so cheap. And he built his own reputation off of that. So the point I'm trying to make here is that so many people, they assume things. They assume that people had it easy. And they assume, oh, if you have connections or if you went to Ivy League school, you're good to go. You're guaranteed success. And maybe there's a bit of truth in that. Maybe there's a good portion of people who do get advantages, nepotism, all these things, favoritism, because of that. But I guarantee you, if you look at the top people, especially in the United States, in a lot of Western countries nowadays, because of how the system is set up, there is a lot of meritocracy going around. People worked and hustled and got to where they got to. And the meritocracy that's at play may not be perfect in the sense that, oh, if you just have everything, you're good to go. I mean, Anderson Cooper, as you guys know him now, he was quite the man. He was quite the individual. He had the talent and potential to become a news reporter. But the actual system in play wasn't letting him in, so he had to make his own way. He hustled and worked really hard to get there. Another great analogy would be job hunting. You know, even if you have the skills and the experience and everything necessary and you're the best fit for the position, if you sit in your room and do nothing and don't go out and tell people and make them aware of your skills, you're not going to get a job. So you get the point. There's other elements to it. So what am I saying by all this? Well, I just want to conclude that, you know, sometimes the stories get very touching, and I was recently reading about this man, Mark Anastasi. Now, this is a man who's not famous, not well known in any ways, and his story just brought tears to my eyes, and you know, it's very touching, and it can teach you a lot of things in different ways. So let me just summarize it, because stories can get complicated, and sometimes, you know, we don't have the time to just explain the whole thing with all its twists and turns. This man moved to England at the age of 18 for a better life, but he couldn't find a job. He was horrible. It was just horrible. He was living in a time where he was homeless. He stacked tons and tons of credit card debts onto himself, and he was down to his last dollar. He was living off the streets, and every day he would look at job postings trying to get a job, and he was constantly depressed. And he would just go to supermarkets. He would try and buy something. There's this one story where he literally looks at two pieces of fruit or vegetable, a broccoli and a cucumber, and this man finally decided on one of the fruit or vegetable, and he brought this vegetable up to the cashier and realized he couldn't afford either one. It was too expensive, and he broke down crying. Like, that's a tough life to live. And you might be saying, well, it's his fault for tacking on all this debt. Well, the thing was, he kind of started tacking it on after, you know, he couldn't find a job and he had to pay for things. He was eventually kicked out of his apartment, and because he had to survive and constantly scared he would starve to death, he had to keep adding more and more credit card debt. And sometimes the credit card companies, their psychology works to make you, you know, spend more and more. Dave Ramsey, one of the things he says is cut up your credit cards. And there is a bit of truth to that, because of how interest rates work and how, you know, $1 a debt, if you don't pay it, can snowball into $100, and then, you know, that same order of magnitude or even greater can apply if you know, rack up $10,000 in debt, which is scary. You can be hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, in debt, based off how interest rates work. So, you know, Dave Ramsey, this is, you know, I've read one of his books, Total Money Makeover, and what he says is it's more geared towards the mainstream masses. I didn't personally like it that much because it's more so geared towards the average Joe and dealing with that debt. And so that's fine for people who can't, you know, work with debt and so forth. But anyhow, back to the point. Again, I'm not detracting or spreading any negativity towards Dave Ramsey. I'm just saying, not the guy personally for me, but it could be of use to you if you're in that situation and you don't know what to do with your money and you have a lot of credit card problems. So, Mark Anastasi, to summarize his story, he was depressed, he was broke, and he was crying constantly. And that's a horrible place to be for you, for me, for anyone. And he was constantly scared of not being able to feed himself and starve to death. And eventually what occurred was he eventually took himself from that life and turned it into a life where he was making tons of money. He was making over 6 figures and doing very well. And it's a long story, and it's an incredible story. And now he lives almost a dream life, you know, traveling the world. And it's just an incredible story. I haven't, you know, finished learning about his whole story yet, but I just find it very incredible, and it gives you hope. And you know, that's a place that a lot of people are or will be or might get to. And you know, at that moment in time for him, it was so dark. And maybe it's tough for you to relate because you were always rich or you always had it decently well. I mean, to be in that place where you're in your darkest of times, you're depressed, you can't even pay for food, and you have all this mountain of debt, and that debt is just making you feel so miserable and in pain and so forth. It sucks, and for him to get through that, I just think it's incredible. And it was a horrible cycle for him too, because he had to keep spending more and more money through his credit cards just to stay alive. So now I want to just conclude this whole thing by talking about some contrary things that I think are probably the most useful things in this video. Just things from my own reference point and experience. First off, I do think that don't let this scare you too much. You know, one thing I've learned from travel bloggers and, you know, a community called minimalists, I've just heard about this community, and their whole idea is like, you know, you want to minimize all the expenses you live. I won't consider myself a minimalist, but learning about personal finance and minimalism, as well as travel bloggers and people who travel for a living, you realize that your possessions and all the excess stuff that's really like a waste of your money and really does you no good, doesn't bring any happiness, there's just like stupid stuff that you have, you can cut out and save money with. I mean, I'm just looking around at all the junk that I could probably cut out and save. A bunch of like books and textbooks I never read, a lot of comic books, random ornaments, and so forth. And the point I'm trying to make is that one thing that you don't want to go to extreme of, sure, you know, it's good to relate and understand how tough it can be for this man and how, you know, he's scared of starving to death and so forth. But I also have other reference points. You know, Elon Musk, he wanted to stretch his limits, so he lived off $1 a day eating just pasta and hot dogs. And he really wanted to see how low could I go and still make it work. And then there's people like Tai Lopez, amazing entrepreneur. He's said that, you know, in Western countries, no one really actually starves to death here. Like, it doesn't occur. That fear is oftentimes without base, and if you can remove that from your system, it can free you from a lot of the restrictions or limitations you're placing on yourself that is preventing you from succeeding in life, from starting a company or business, or, you know, pursuing your dream job or your passion or whatever else it is. So don't let that fear of starvation or homelessness be a constrictor, rather than letting it, you can let it free you in a certain way. So obviously I have a lot more to say, but this video is getting really long, and let's face it, YouTubers, they have very short attention span. I'm going to have to cut this video short and save the rest for another video. So that's just how it is, and again, it's just an inspiring story, just amazing, and I think if nothing else, it will bring you hope. I know there's a lot of people out there who have tremendous potential, and they've been in situations, or they are in situations, where they're homeless, where they don't think they have any skills. Their sense of worth is at an all-time low. Some of these people have degrees. Some of these people have gone to high-class establishments. Maybe they've gone to Ivy League schools. Maybe they have a lot of skills and experiences, and they've done a lot of stuff in life, and they're not making it happen. Things are not working out, and they're homeless, or they can't pay rent, or they can't find a job, or they think they're worthless, and they get very depressed, and maybe their family or friends or strangers tell them that they're worth nothing. And I've been in these situations. You can let these people put you down. You can focus on them, or you can focus on your current situation, and that's not the way to go, because it'll just lead you to depression. It'll make you believe or buy into what they say. In reality, just like this man, just like all the other stories of amazing people out there like John Paul DiGiorio, you can't let these people define them, because you have possibly tremendous potential, tremendous accomplishments that maybe you've even achieved in the past. Looking back in the past, I had done a lot of great things. I had competed professionally on the state and county level for piano, classical piano, for many, many, many years. And I memorized and played songs, and that's not something most people can do. And I was doing this on top of very high level classes in school and a bunch of other stuff, and sports, and a bunch of other things. And you forget about that, and you go into these dark times where things aren't working out in your life, or money's an issue, and you focus on the present moment. And the problem with that is it can maybe misguide you, or force you, or trick you into buying in to haters or people who are telling you that you're worth nothing. Or you can get very depressed on your own and just screw yourself over. But you can't let that occur. You can't let these, people screw you over. So have hope, work hard. If you're doing something wrong or things aren't working out, maybe you need to try something different. And that's all I gotta say. Hopefully this video provided you some value. As always, subscribe if you're not subscribed. This is the type of content I do, and I hope to see you in my next video. And if nothing else, if you're a helpful person, share this video with someone you might think would be helped by this. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys later.